Добрый день. Приветствую всех.
Good afternoon, dear colleagues. I'd like to welcome all the participants of the webinar.
Прошу прощения, что у меня нестандартный формат.
I don't have a standard template for my presentation. Sorry for that.
Не получил
For some reason, I didn't receive the sample, the template of the presentation of the deck, and I used my own instead of that. But I hope that it's not a big problem and it won't impact the quality of my today's input. My today's topic is the topic which was actually initiated by Henrik Altschuler back in 1981. He was working on these ideas for some time, but then after that, this process was suspended. And recently, we've seen this topic, this theme, being the focus of my attention, at least of my attention. So what we've seen the most recent progress in the recent 40 years. This development had those ups and downs with those pauses, and I'd like to speak about this progress with you today. Once it was back in on a spring day in the evening. Igor Vertkin, you know, many of you know this person, know who he is. Many of you know him personally. Those of you who don't know him, this is one of the maybe one of the best, one of the closest Altschuler's students, successors. He was his co-author, a full-fledged co-author of the development of the creative personality strategy theory. Once we visited Altschuler together and we talked to each other, and he suggested us working on a new subject, on a new research area. So this is what he said to all of us. We didn't put down his words, but this is what I memorized. So we are studying the development of technical systems, and we have achieved some kind of success in this area. However, technical systems, be it products or services, or maybe combinations of products and services, all this is what people develop. People develop technical systems to meet their demands, both their personal demands, individual demands, or collective demands, public demands, state demands, or other demands. And it would be good, it would be interesting to see this dynamics in the evolution of demands, how this impacts the development of the technical progress on technical systems. Moreover, Altschuler has mentioned that if we start studying, researching demands, we will be able to find one of the key ideas about how we understand the development, the progress, the technical progress, the technology progress, and the development of the society as a whole. This was the first time when I heard from Mr. Altschuler speaking about something beyond technical problems, which TRIZ was about, but rather addressing like more general problems, issues related to societies. We worked with Igor, and we also taught from Henrik Altschuler, so those ideas we worked on actually gave an impetus to the development of the creative personality theory. Mr. Altschuler was interested in this creative personality concept, and like many of you remember, he was also interested in this creative personality idea, which requires, and of course we understand that all societies and society needs as many creative personalities as possible for a sound development, for productive development. The theme which was proposed by Mr. Altschuler, and we shared this topic with Vertkin, there were two main areas. The first one was about the development of individual demands and the dynamics of these demands, and then the second one was the dynamics of public demands. we split these two areas between each other, Igor and myself. Igor started working on developing, researching individual demands, while myself, I focused more on public demands. So we worked together and we always shared our ideas, our opinions, or results, outputs from our research. We then discussed all that with Mr. Altschuler. So what I'm telling you about in this deck, in this presentation, is the result of our common work and our common project. Let's start with the basic thing. So we have those demands or needs, or those preferences or wants. So we have this needs and wants called in English, translating then the word wants into Russian. I struggled doing that and I couldn't do that. I couldn't find a proper equivalent. A need is something which we cannot do without. So this is a condition, a status, which creates this satisfaction feeling. If we don't have this satisfaction feeling, then we might have adverse impacts, adverse consequences. Wants is something which we would prefer to have, but something that we can do without. Both of them open up this path to innovation. Now, what are needs? Like to have food, create some basic, consume some basic food is a need. So you see bread here in this picture. Again, bread, covers, satisfies this basic demand, while this cake here and does not satisfy this basic demand. I can easily do without a cake, but I cannot do without a loaf of bread. Now, again, a want or a preference is now will be transformed to a need. Now, we remember that first a car was something only rich people could afford, but now, again, for any family, a car is a need because you cannot get to work or come back home without a car, or you also are unable to do many other things if you don't have a car. The same is about smartphones. I remember in 1998 I organized, I hosted a workshop at Motorola. At the time, they launched the first smartphone, which entered the market, and that was presented by Nokia. That was a big smartphone, like a brick-size smartphone. And during break, one of the workshop participants, vice president for development, Motorola, he was VP for technical development. He spoke about whether we need such a smartphone. It was worth over $900 at the time, and he was speaking at the webinar that this smartphone will never become a mass product. Now, needs do not usually change as a rule. They do not change, but what is changed are those ways we satisfy demands, we satisfy needs. Again, people have always had the need to communicate with other people, and they satisfied these needs through various means. So you see here in this picture different images of phones from different ages, but all of them work to satisfy the same need in communication across people. Again, the need remains the same, but those ways to satisfy this need have changed. Some needs from time to time become more relevant or more vivid, more critical for people, and this is very often related to the emergence of technical systems or technologies which satisfy these needs. So before the massive introduction of technologies, there were many threats to confidentiality, to privacy. People have always been interested in other people's lives, and they always wanted to have access to this information. All these threats to privacy were very limited in time, and they were restricted to specific people or specific periods. But now these threats have emerged with the implementation of technology. Now we always face these threats. It's easily to replicate, to make those threats as massive as possible. So again, this has made the meeting of these needs more complicated. Again, upgrading technologies makes looking at other people's lives and trying to get access to information shared by many people, by other people. So this new technology makes this a hidden process which you can use to get access to information. Again, needs are only with individuals. Only individuals have needs. Groups of people or organizations or societies or the states in itself do not have those needs. They don't have needs. The problem is that any need can be shared by a majority of a group. It can be a family, or it can be a team within a company, within an organization, or it can be a major company or a government, a state. We all can call it, or we can call all of these groups, those members of a group, can share some needs, and if this is the case, we can say that these groups have their own needs, collective needs. Again, a group of people can include a few people, but again, those individual needs can only pertain to individuals, to individual persons. When we started working on researching needs, we had this first question: where do we find this list of needs? And it so happened that through all of this, we studied literature and we decided to create such a list ourselves. In 1982, when we were working on a presentation together with Igor, we presented our developments at one of the conferences. Nina Linko, one of the participants of the conference, asked us about how we created this list of needs. And again, he was the one to present our ideas, the ideas of the two of us, that we were actually the authors of this list of needs. So the list of needs at the time, which we developed at the time, was really very similar to what they had in the West. First of all, I'm referring to Maslow's list of needs, which he introduced in 1943, and we remember the pyramid, the Maslow pyramid. Many researchers think that there is no pyramid, that it does not exist, that this should be flat. And here you see the three lists of needs, which are quoted by different research papers on psychology, speaking of people's needs. Again, we have other lists of needs which are available, but what's interesting is that the majority of these needs are overlapping. And again, they are different in terms of structure. Again, we have the Maslow pyramid. We also have some other flat, non-hierarchical structures or something else. All these catalogs or lists of needs overlap in many terms, so we can select any of them and work with any of these lists.
работать с потребностями, особенно когда речь заходит о
Now,
технических
researching
решениях, о
needs,
продуктах и услугах,
and speaking of
с
products and
большим слоем
services,
потребностей очень
and
неудобно.
working with large
Поэтому
categories of
нам
needs
пришлось
is
разделить
not convenient. So that is why
то,
we
что мы назвали
decided to categorize and
высокопрочные
create
отослённые.
sub-needs.
Но,
So we
скажем, если мы говорим о комфорте, то
created
здесь
these categories.
простота
Speaking of
и
comfort or
использование
convenience,
наверное, какого-то
this is
продукта, или
simplicity,
лёгкость
ease of
или
use,
лёгкость его использования. Это
simplicity of
возможность
using a
вдохнуть
product
душевный
or a
покой и новый
possibility to
опыт.
relax
То есть
or
каждую большую
find
потребность из
some
какого-то каталога
relaxation. So this is
я
again
могу разделить на
different catalogs which we
какие-то
created
более
for
мелкие
the needs, and
потребности,
we can
которые
further split it into
гораздо
less
более фундаментальны, когда речь идет о
major
развитии
needs when it comes to the development of
какой-то конкретной технической системы, чем
technology or
большие
upgrading a technical
каталоги.
systems.
Например, телефон. Одна из
For example,
потребностей,
a
которые
phone. And
удовлетворяет
one
любой
of the needs
device технической
which
системы, это
satisfies
безопасность.
by every
Приложение
single
к
technical
телефону это, в
system
частности,
is the
физическая
security and
безопасность, то есть
system.
там
We might
использование
speak
телефона
of the
не
safety, physical
имея
safety. That means that they're
скорее
quite
всего, не
safe in
будет
their
безопасно
utilization.
для человека. Это
It might
защита
be
от
safe for
несанкционированного
a
доступа,
human,
что
and this is also about unauthorized access
было спецификой
protection.
самых первых телефонов.
And basically, this is what
Защита
was
от
incorporated in the
разработки
first
программного
phones.
обеспечения,
Moreover,
а
this is
также
about malware protection,
возможность скрывать
as well
данные
as
о
the
обговоренном
possibility to hide
положении,
the data on
поведении и так
your
далее.
location, on your
Вот
behavior,
последнее
etc. And the final here, the final need
скрыть информацию
is
о
the privacy of
моем
location and
местонахождении
behavior
и
data.
о моем поведении, она долгое время была не
For long
удовлетворена.
periods of time, it was
Поскольку
not
существуют
satisfied
разные
because
приложения
there are
операционного, многие
different
собирают
applications, and on the
информацию
backgrounds,
много
they collect
постоянных
information
активностью.
on these
И вот
particular states,
достаточно
on these
недавно, в
particular
2021
activities.
году,
Just recently, in
Apple
2021, Apple
сделал приложение, которое называется Apple Tracking
produced an application which is called as Apple's App Tracking Transparency, and it's gaining its popularity. And so this application requests permission
пользователя о
from the user
возможности передать информацию какой-то третьей
the
стороне.
opportunity to give this information to a third party. So now the society
Индивидуумы, отдельные личности, существуют группы
exists
такие,
in forms
скажем,
of
семья,
different individuals, families,
группа
groups,
друзей,
groups of friends,
группа, какая-то команда на работе,
or some
или это
teams,
может быть
colleagues at
организация.
work,
То есть у
maybe
этого
an
возможно
organization,
существуют
a
разные
company.
уровни
That
иерархии,
means
и между
that there are
этими уровнями
different types of
возможны
hierarchy,
конфликты между разными
and
потребностями.
there might be
Например,
some
я
conflicts
сижу
over people's needs.
в метро
Let me give you an
и хочу
example. I'm on the subway and I would like to listen to some music. And if I'm going to switch on
скажем, телефон,
my phone and
я мог
turn the
слушать
volume
мелодию, то я,
on,
скорее всего, буду
I'm going to turn it up so that I can hear the music. That probably would disturb other people, and
вокруг меня. Поэтому
probably it's going to be disturbing for everyone.
возник такой продукт.
In connection with that, there is such a product as the headset, for example. There was a Sony Walkman at the very beginning. Now we use wireless headphones. They are very comfortable, but the conflict
между двумя людьми или людьми
between
или группой
two
привел
people
к
or
такому,
between different groups,
такой инновации.
it led us to such an innovation as the headphones.
Вы видите здесь несколько, я не
On
хочу
the slides,
всему
you
посвятить
can also
таблички,
see some more
но
examples, and I wouldn't like to
мы
start
можем
reading out
очень часто
everything But frequently, conflicts between different hierarchy levels of the society, they could lead to such situations, and they can become sources of innovational products or of innovational services. One more interesting need and its particularity that there are obvious needs and there are latent or hidden needs. And they are very precious in terms of innovation. Now, what do we mean when we speak of latent needs? They are the needs which are not satisfied and they're not expressed well. People do not express them well, not because they don't have them. No, because they don't have such modes of solution and the idea how to satisfy them. And one of the ideas in terms of the analyzing of the market, it is called as the voice of the customer. And not so often, very seldom, people may hide such needs. And one of the scopes, why do we study the needs and why we're looking for different tools? This is, by the way, MPV discovery. And this is, by the way, the goal of these innovations. In particular, to find out these latent needs. One of the obvious examples of the latent needs they are such companies as Uber, Lyft. They became to be the major competitors to the taxi drivers. It was not safe to go with the taxi drivers directly. They accepted only cash. It was also quite a dangerous drive sometimes. And if we asked, what you don't like about the taxis? They said that they might talk too much or they might arrive late, etc. So when the founders of Uber realized that there were such a latent need, they found a solution. And nowadays, this solution is ubiquitous. And this solution was found, and with that, it was very quickly developed, and it was not even clear why there was such a delay with the solution. Moreover, there are background needs. They are the needs which are crucial to be satisfied, and usually they are satisfied by all the competitive services or products till the moment when one does not stop doing that. Let me give you one example. This is the keyboard of the smartphone. And physical keyboards have always provided to us tactile confirmation when I send a message or when I call, for example, to somebody. Now with the touch screens, the users started to complain that they didn't have any feedback. They felt disconnected. They couldn't understand whether the phone was made or whether the message was sent. And when we speak of needs, we shall also take in mind that there are anti-needs. You see them on the screen, and they're quite obvious as well. For example, I would like to be independent, and at the same time, I would like to belong to a group. I would like to be safe. However, sometimes I would like to take risks. I need to feel busy, but at the same time, I have to take some rest. Somebody like stability, somebody likes, changes, etc. So we shall take it into consideration that with needs there are anti-needs, and these might be an opportunity to open to have new discoveries in terms of the development of technologies. And in the United States, but not only there, in the Western world in general, for a long time, there were energetic drinks. At the manufacturers, they declared that with the help of such a drink, you can, for example, be prepared for your exam for the whole night and you wouldn't fall asleep. And as an example is the Red Bull drinks. Recently, however, more and more spread it on the market other products which help to get relaxed. They help to the relaxation, such words as power, for example, as they're getting more and more popular, and Slow Cow is an example of that. Now there are several strategies how to satisfy one's needs. You see them on the screen. To increase or to reduce the amount, I would like to have a bigger TV set at home. Or I would like to have a very small TV set just to place it in my kitchen. I would like to change static conditions and to keep some dynamic conditions. Sometimes I would like to personalize some services or some goods so that they could reflect on my own needs. And from time to time, I don't have a wish to buy something, but I would like to do it on my own because at that point, I have a feeling and an impression of my own value. I do believe in myself. I can show it to other people, and etc. And they are the strategies. Personalization of the object. For example, standard shoe, sport shoe, they help to satisfy the standard needs of a person. But some time ago, Nike, they introduced to the market a service. You can choose some kind of shoes they have to change its color, to add some marking, for example, some logos, etc. So you can customize your shoes, and there are so many such examples. Now, to extend the system in order to meet more needs. The same object, however, more needs are involved. Look at here the standard office chair, and the main function is to support the body, just as the function of any normal standard chair. But Herman Miller, in the model of Aeron, it's not only supporting the body, but it also protects the spine, helps to reduce stress, it also helps to the posture. As you see, there is also the net on the back of the chair. It helps to breathe the body, to decrease the body temperature, and the more needs you see here, the more needs can be satisfied here, and it's so popular among people who spend their life in the office. Of course, it is not so cheap, and the same, by the way, is with the smartphones. Another standard example is that, or there was the major function of a phones was to be in touch, to communicate with people. Now our smartphones, they have lots of other functions, and the number and the variety of these functions is constantly increasing. And we still call it the smartphone. However, it's not a smartphone any longer, it's something different. Very often we cannot satisfy a need directly. And in this case, we start imitating this need. For example, and you see the climbing, rock climbing on the screen, it's quite a dangerous leisure activity. And they're not so accessible. Of course, it depends on where you live, it depends on the weather, if they are located next to you. It also depends on the weather. It requires training, skill, so it's quite a risky activity. And in recent years, for many years in different cities, now there are different sites where you can imitate climbing. Actually, the walls in these places imitate the rules. And athletes can go to this climbing center at any time and to climb up these walls, and they feel some pleasure from this activity. One more obvious direction is the reduction of some low value steps. Now we are all lazy creatures and we don't want to spend our energy, our time. For example, in order to brew some coffee, you need to do some simple steps. To take some grains, to grind them, to add some water, to wait for some time, to warm the drink up, and etc. And then you can drink it. And there are coffee machines. They use capsules, and they help us eliminate these steps. Just need to press the button, and then this machine gives you the coffee you wish. The process which works and which is used to define the needs which are not satisfied well in some products or systems. It involves several steps. You can see them on the screen. However, there are different sub-steps, but this is not the task of my presentation today to train you. No, I just would like to show you the general approach. The logic is very simple. We pick up the object of innovation. It can be a product, a service, a system. Then we identify the stakeholders who has this necessity, this need. Are they users, are they buyers, or are they competing groups? And the list of stakeholders can be quite a vast one. Then there is the map of needs, and there is the decomposition of the needs into sub-needs. Then there is the assessment of the fulfillment level at the sub-need level. And there is also the SAP related to an analysis of the activity flow. And sometimes, by the way, the monitoring may be a very difficult one, specifically when we in different products, we can be tracked not only by the quantitative units, but it also can be measured by the qualitative units in terms of clothes, for example, or some jewelry or some services where you cannot measure with the figures. And here you need to be probably some kind of not direct, but you speak here that the service is a process, and when we work with a product, it is a process. If we speak of a pen, if we use a pen in order to write something down on paper, you need to take away the cap to put it somewhere aside. Then you need to place the pen between your fingers, and only after that you can start writing. So it's a process, it has specific steps, and every single step has its price as well as its level of importance in the process, or what we usually call, in trace, the main function, the auxiliary function, corrective function, and etc. And it's advisable for every need to realize what the anti-need might be and whether it makes sense to satisfy the anti-need, because I have just mentioned the anti-need can lead to a very interesting technical development. The next step, which shall be done, is to assess how these needs, whether they qualify the product, how they are connected with the necessities and needs of other people, or whether they can satisfy probably some groups. After that, the most unmet need is selected, and the strategies, which was described previously, they are being assessed in terms of dynamics, for example, to eliminate the steps which are not so important, or to create imitation, so on and so forth. I will give you a very simple example. In 1986, we were developing the needs, we were identifying them, and we became an idea to try to create something so that we could offer a product. And I decided to try with the shoes for children. At that time, I got my baby daughter, and I was thinking about that. And so I had this very simple analysis, and I realized that the shoe for children does not meet one simple need for kids. You can also, of course, divide it into sub-needs, for example, some diversity, some entertainment, some games, some play, because we know that children love playing games. And I also tried to think in this context of the shoes, and I suddenly realized that the shoes shall be versatile. It shall change its color or the form, etc. So it shall engage the child. So I decided to add some lights. I decided to share this idea with the art teacher, and he was interested in that. But we still remember that it was the time of the Soviet Union. So in 1992, in Baltimore, in the U.S., in the street, I saw some kids, and they were running down the street. They had sports shoes with lights up soles. There were some very little lamps And those LEDs got some energy and they changed the color, and children enjoy that. You can order them in Amazon, and many companies nowadays manufacture these shoes. But in 1992, the first company which issued these shoes was called as LA Gear. Now, slightly a more difficult case. For several years, I worked with Mars Company. You know this company. You know these products, these food, chocolates, chocolate bars, M&M, for example. They are also extremely popular. They are drops, chocolate drops. So, Mars, and one of the ideas was Mars drinks. It was in the United Kingdom, and they started to manufacture coffee machines, and they used some pockets or some capsules, and the machine was called as Flavia, and by 1990s it was widespread in European offices, and they manufactured them only for office spaces, and there was a task to adapt this machine or to introduce it to the American market. And as I just mentioned, I worked for about 10 years with this company. We had different projects, and there was the question, what shall we offer to the Americans? The same machine, or probably something different. So we created a list of needs which this coffee machine might meet. And once again, my goal here is not to describe in details every single case, but to highlight the most important aspects. So what kind of needs can be met with the help of this Flavia single drip machine? It's very simple. First of all, it's convenience. You just need to insert the pack or the capsule, to press the button, and your coffee is ready. And the coffee is, by the way, a very good one, very tasty. And one of the needs which is met by this machine is the diversity. Now, the office workers in the US, just Americans, they like, I believe everybody likes, but it was clear at that time in the US that they like diversification. Speaking of the same product or the same service, if we speak of a coffee, during their breaks, many office workers, they went to some Starbucks points or a coffee shop. And what is a Starbucks? You can take coffee, cappuccino, latte, frappuccino, many exotic drinks, coffee drinks as well, not only coffee. So you can order your tea, hot chocolate. And at that point, there was the idea, let us try our machine to satisfy these particular needs. We are going to have just one coffee machine, but it can prepare for you the same drinks which you can find in Starbucks. Of course, there was a technical problem. If you go to a coffee shop, any coffee shop, Starbucks for example, then you see there is a machine for espresso, a machine for cappuccino. There are some stations when you can just have a regular coffee, or a machine for hot chocolate, tea brew, etc. Now, if we are going to have just one machine, it could be a real monster. That is why there is a real global contradiction, a conflict, many conflicts, and all those conflicts were resolved in the course of several years as the result of the TRIS application. And in 2018, Mars company, they sold this product. It is called as Flavia Drink Station, the station for coffee or for different drinks. And it was sold to the biggest company at that time, which were manufacturing coffee machines, to Lavazza company for $650 million. Now, speaking of the researchers,
Now, the research of the dynamics has both pros and cons. Now, looking at the dynamics of needs or need dynamics, this is how we call this whole procedure. This is something which enables us to analyze the research needs regardless of the product itself. A product is temporary while needs are permanent. This is why researching, studying what and how needs are satisfied helps us identify new areas in a specific product, and also it enables us to find latent needs which are not directly related to this product, which this product does not satisfy. And with that, we can move on to developing a new product or a new service. But this will be partially related to the initial one, to the source one. Victor, you have 15 minutes left, and also maybe we can leave a few minutes for questions and answers. All right, understood. I will try to respect the schedule. Now, the issue, the problem with that approach is that it's very purely engineering based, and it's not possible to find a specific solution. We don't know what function do we need to change, what function we need to adjust, and what parameter we need to adjust in this product. Again, this is part of a different technology, which is called MPV discovery, and many of you know what this is. I will try to speed up a little bit from this slide. Now, looking at both of them, we can use both of them. We can use both ND and MPV discovery. This can be a combined approach. Using the need dynamics approach, you can understand which needs are not satisfied or are not satisfied at all when it comes to existing strategies, which I have already described earlier. And with that, you can reach this MPV discovery stage when you take a need and associate it to a number of functions. So you create a function-based model respecting the law of parallel systems, the law of evolutions. And with that, you can use the standard procedure of identifying key consumer parameters and then switching, transferring, progressing to the stage associated to this product, these consumer parameters that can bring us and lead us to a practical solution to a problem. I'd like to speak about a case, of a simple case, which is opening a car's trunk. This has always been a complex procedure, especially when you have something in your hands. It's really very hard to open your trunk. When you have kids running around you, you need to take your key out, or if you have a remote control, you need to push a button, and then you need to place your bag somewhere else. You need to also keep an eye on your children. So it's a very, very fuzzy activity. In 2012, Ford invented opening a trunk with your leg, with your foot. You place your leg under the sensor, and then after that the IR sensor activates the trunk opening. This solution has become very popular. Toyota, Hyundai, and other car brands started replicating the solution. It was patented, but at the same time, those patents actually, with that, to avoid any conflicts, they made some alterations to the sensor itself. Again, changing the distance to the foot. Hyundai asked us to find a new solution which could improve the initial Ford's approach. So they wanted this approach to be innovative. They wanted us to offer something new, so we came up such a solution. We identified that one of the key needs which is not satisfied or is not satisfied at all is related to comfort. For example, comfort and safety. Not all people can lift their legs or foot or feet and place it near the sensor. The disabled cannot do it, for example. It's not available for them, such a movement is not available for them. And that's why we wanted to invent something which would not require any movement to open the trunk. So with that, we created a functional model of an existing system. We took the trimming principle, the trimming approach, and the solution was really very simple, which we came up with. A person coming up to the car has the key in their pocket, and then the transmitter is identified by the car, and when you come up to the door of the trunk, it just opens by itself. So this is what we came up with, and Hyundai started using this technology back in 2019. So since that time, they've been integrating this technology in many of its models. Again, those technical systems that are developed are based on the technical system, law development, the development of the law and development technical system. So we identify those problems, those issues. Again, those motors driving the progress, they most often are related to the evolution of needs. So if we have a technical system development law, it somehow reflects those evolution of needs. Needs can change, and this is how we can explain that systems develop in their own way or not in a different way. Of course, we don't know much about what needs are and how they are developed. We cannot estimate the satisfaction level for products or services. Again, it's not always possible to quantify that. And this relates to furniture, to jewelry, which I have already spoken about. Some systems, like ball pens or classic systems that remain unaltered for decades or for centuries. They are changed somehow a little bit, but there are no like leapfrogging or quantum leaps in the development of such devices, of these devices. An interesting question is what needs toys and games satisfy? Is it possible really to forecast the development of games or needs in this area? Maybe this is not quite an important question, but on the other hand, it is. Again, games are becoming one of the fastest development market segments. Viral objects. We also have viral objects, for example, decorative stones. some time ago in America, there was a new product launched which was sold in many copies. That was just a box with a stone. You can open the box and you have a stone inside it, and there is a manual on how to touch the stone. So you needed just to stroke the stone, and there was a manual for that, and it became a very sensational product. I have another example. So we have many videos where they show people how boxes are opened. So this unboxing experience is offered, and these videos really go viral, getting dozens of millions of views. Again, understanding why this happens. This is not just a specific example. So this is like a window to somewhere else, to understanding what needs are satisfied with these popular market solutions, and how we can explain their success. There are other questions which are really very relevant and very complicated, and they are related to the development, to the evolution of needs. Again, this research is at its early stage, and we are keeping track on that. That's it from my side. I'd like to apologize for speaking maybe more than the allotted time slot. Yes, thank you so much. I believe everyone was interested in your input, in your very specific examples. We have a few questions in the chat box. Victor, you can look at the chat. I cannot open the chat, Mikhail. You need to push a button. Yes, I know how Zoom works, but for some reason I cannot do that. I don't have this button which is active. All right, I believe you. Now, what cases, what examples can you give us from the real trees projects which identified unique latent needs, or where these needs or background needs were replicated? So a question on latent and background needs and trees projects related to them. The last example with the trunk door opening, no one really complained about the activation, the opening of the trunk door. No one really complained about this issue. That was not an issue for anybody. When Hyundai showed us their marketing research results, we started thinking about it. So we really wanted to offer something else. Again, the inconvenience of having this movement to lift your leg to open the trunk, it wasn't considered in this survey. Again, people responded that sometimes this feature didn't work because the sensor is somewhere else, somewhere far away from the foot. Again, maybe it might not work when you have a lot of dirt on your bumper, and then because of that, the signal is it disappears because of the dirt. When we analyzed all that using our list of needs, we had an assumption. We assumed that using this movement to raise your leg, raise your foot, maybe this is not really convenient, comfortable for all people. That's why after that we started working further, coming up with a functional model using the trimming approach, and then we came up with a solution. Now, yes, I have raised my hand. This is how we ask questions. Now, this is how we ask questions. Simon, we are like a question on that. And then after that, you will be able to ask your question. Again, I really expected your question because this is quite a relevant topic. Our colleague, just to add on that, this
Никто
Flavia
не хотел создавать
coffee
машину, не было никакой
machine.
потребности
No one wanted
в
to
деле кофе,
invent a coffee machine,
и
being able to make a
шоколад,
cappuccino, a
и чай и
latte,
так далее.
or a
Коллеги, значит,
hot chocolate
вопрос
cup or something
такой.
else.
В ТРИС принят
There was no need like
постулат
that.
технических систем с
There is a
конкретной
postulate for the trees and for the development of technical systems in line with the
Согласно
objective
вашему докладу,
development laws. According to your input, Victor, according to your presentation, technical systems develop
нет ли
in
здесь
line with
Я бы
system
здесь
needs.
добавил бы, да, значит,
Don't we have a
момент
contradiction
если
here? I'd like to just
удастся
add to that.
их отметить
If
как-то, да, то было бы очень здорово.
you can comment on that, it would be good. Those laws on developing of needs
Мне кажется, перед
or non-development of needs. And again, this is what I'm interested about, what I'm interested in. Thank you for your question. I don't like the notion of the law on the development of needs. I don't think this is the right thing to put it. People always want to eat, they are hungry, they need to breathe, they need oxygen. Sometimes they don't. If, for example, if I want to commit a suicide, then I don't need the oxygen. This is an anti-need. This is a market for suicide killers, now self-killers. Again, these issues are evolving and a lot is changing. Some needs are getting stronger, some are getting weaker, but needs themselves, they do not change. I cannot tell you that they are evolving. We have an S-curve, transforming, switching from one S-curve to another S-curve. Technology evolves, so we see new products appearing, and there is an assumption, there is hypothesis, which is not yet confirmed. So those development laws identified within trees, are they efficient really? And this actually speaks for the fact that they satisfy those needs that are evolving, that evolve. I am referring to the dynamics in their evolution. Just if you can briefly comment on technical systems. Technical systems develop in line with objective laws or in accordance with the system of needs. Again, laws are objective indeed, but they are objective at some long section. So there is this dynamic development law. Why systems get dynamic? Why is it good to have dynamic systems? Because we have a need for some kind of diversity. So this contradiction of system development laws and system niche development. So they are not, there is no contradiction here. Of course not. So these are just different levels. Thank you, Victor. Simon, over to you.